Hey friend, welcome. I'm so excited to have you here listening to another episode of the Pattern Design Circle podcast. Here we talk all about the ins and outs of designing knit and crochet patterns and running a business that makes it all possible. I'm Jessica, your host, knitting pattern designer, design mentor, and the friend in your ear. Can't wait to dive right in. The Pattern Design Circle podcast is sponsored by the Pattern Design Circle, a membership community for knit and crochet pattern designers that are feeling lost, lonely, or frustrated in their business. It connects you with a supportive community that's always eager to answer your questions and help you through the hard times. And there's loads of resources and activities specifically catered to business and designing. Sound like your jam? Check it out at snickerdoodleknits.com/design-circle. That's snickerdoodle, like the cookie, knits, knits.com/design-circle. All right, let's get into it. Hello, and welcome to another episode of Pattern Design Circle podcast. I'm so excited to be here with a special guest. We have Julie from ACCROchet with us to talk all about translating patterns to another language or other languages. So, Julie, do you want to give us a little introduction to who you are, what you do?
Sure. So I am a Canadian, which will be eventually easy to hear. I know that. So I'm a French Canadian actually, and I got into crochet 10 or 15 years ago, and I quickly got into Tunisian crochet, crocheting socks, teaching crochet, designing crochet patterns, and because I've always also been that kid that played school all summer and that forced the neighborhood kids to play school with her. I also do tech editing and I do translation because I'm bilingual. So that sums up what my business is about, like crochet design, pattern services, and community.
And you also, since this is a podcast for designers, you have a community specifically for French-speaking crochet designers?
French-speaking crochet business people. It's inclusive of all genders. We currently only have cis women, but we're definitely open to have other people join the collective. So yeah, it felt kind of lonely operating a crochet business in French Canada. And I just decided to sort of recreate the office vibe, but with our crochet businesses to help us thrive in our businesses, but also push crochet to the French community.
Yes, love it. Okay, so it might feel a little obvious why maybe translating patterns is a part of your business. Like you are bilingual, and so it probably makes sense that your patterns are available in both French and English. Just purely curiosity, do you have somebody else? I think you've already told me this, but I don't remember the answer. Do you have somebody else translate your patterns to English for you, or do you do that?
No, I do it. The one thing I can't do for myself is tech editing because you can't see your own mistakes. But no, I do my translation myself. Did you want me to go into how and why?
Sure.
Okay.
Yeah.
Sorry, I sort of lost the question there.
Oh no, had just asked if you translate your own patterns or not.
Yeah, no, that I can do, but I do need someone to check that I haven't left bits in English or in French in the other version, because that's something I can read the pattern 50 times and I will not see that there's a bit left in the other language ever.
One's very small disadvantage to knowing two languages.
Right, exactly. It's quite the disadvantage when you're trying to tell people that you're a tech editor when you don't see your own mistakes. But honestly, you can ask any person that does tech editing, you just can't do it for yourself.
Yep, that's part of why tech editing is so valuable.
Yeah, exactly.
Okay, so why maybe there are folks where it doesn't feel as obvious, like that they want to have their patterns translated. Why might folks choose to have their patterns translated to another language?
So I'm going to guess that your audience is mostly native English speakers. And that's just a factor of being an American-based company. You know, the United States does have another language that's spoken quite a lot, and people tend to assume, I'm trying to say this very nicely, but English speakers tend to assume that everyone speaks English. So that's the first thing, is that not everyone speaks English. And if you go in certain parts of the world, they really don't at all. Like you can travel in my own province and get to places where people don't speak English at all. And those that do, because in big cities, people will be more bilingual. That's true in the States. It's true in Canada. It's true pretty much all over the place. It's not always the same languages, but in big cities, people tend to be bilingual or trilingual or even more than that. But being able to speak another language does not mean that you can read a technical document in that other language. So a lot of people that are okay with having a conversation might not be okay following a pattern in English. So for all of those reasons, it's cool to think about, if you can, offer your patterns in a second language or a third or a fourth. A lot of big yarn companies do it. And it's not necessarily that they have a different budget than we do. It's a lot of the time their fan base that has allowed them to offer this service.
Yeah. So that was actually something I had thought of when you mentioned the fan base, is what if I know currently my audience is, say, 99% English speakers? Does it still make sense for me to translate to another language?
Well, no. If you're satisfied with the number of clients you have today and you don't ever want new clients, absolutely not. You shouldn't translate and try to get a larger audience.
You don't want to grow, then it doesn't matter.
It's up to you. So I understand, like, I will say this. It's much easier for me to convince French speakers that they need to offer their patterns in English, and the growth will be much larger than if you start offering your patterns in Spanish. That said, those people that suddenly have patterns that are gorgeous and that are accessible to them in their language, those people become very loyal fans when you open your business up to them. So for sure, I totally get it. I know that as Americans, you're speaking, like, we're in North America, you're speaking the language of the majority, but at the same time, those minorities want to spend money. They want to, like, follow patterns. And one of the things I see the most in pattern groups in French, and I'm sure it's the same in Spanish, is people looking for a version in French of the pattern that they like in English. So there is a need.
Yes. And you're going to have, I'm guessing, I have not done any of the research on this, so I'm not a well-educated person when talking on this topic, but I'm assuming that there's probably less competition in other languages. Like thinking like Ravelry specifically, like I'm guessing probably English dominates there.
Of course. Yeah. Yeah, definitely. That's true. And when people are searching for patterns, here's the thing, like Ravelry is a prime example of that. You can define your search or refine your search to the language that you're looking for. So if someone's looking for patterns in French, I'm going to come out, but you're not, and you're just not going to show up in that search. So they might see your stuff on Pinterest or in a group, but they just will never get your pattern if they're searching for patterns in French. However, they might find lookalikes, and then you're not getting the benefit of that. So that's another, like, very important thing to note, is that people can just search for the language that they're looking for. They're not necessarily searching for all languages.
And I think that's something important when you're thinking about, okay, my audience, say on Instagram, on my website, all of that. that is really only part of our audience because
Yeah.
with like Ravelry and Etsy and all of these other platforms that we tend to be on to sell our patterns, there's a much larger audience there
Oh
than
yeah, there's
thinking
like
that.
how many people never talk to us, but still like purchase our patterns or follow our patterns wherever. So that's super important. But also, even the audience that's talking to us on social aren't necessarily talking to us in their preferred language. Like
Mhm.
if they know or assume, because I've gotten that where people online don't know that I'm a French Canadian, and they'll be French. I see it in the name on the screen, but they're talking to me in English because they assume that I'm Anglophone. They assume that you're an English speaker too. They're not going to talk to you in their preferred language. So you might not even know that you have like a super large audience of Spanish speakers.
Mhm. Yes, yes. I know also statistically, so I think we're probably talking about French and Spanish because Spanish.
Because we're in North America.
Yes.
Yeah.
But I have noticed, like in my Instagram followers, sometimes in my website analytics, things like that, that Scandinavian countries I see heavily
Yeah.
represented, and I think we even see it even in our designer base. I know
Yeah. That's true.
Finland, and uh,
Mm-hmm.
so it's interesting just to even think about other languages beyond.
Oh yeah, definitely. I am like uh shortening the conversation to just the two major secondary languages in North America, but there's like a whole world.
Mhm. Yeah. Um, okay, so what are the cons of translating a pattern? Why do folks not do it? Why might they choose not to translate a pattern?
So I can tell you what I've seen as far as reasons go, and I don't argue with people that bring up those reasons online just because it's not beneficial. But in a podcast, I think it's the right spot to do it. Um, so the one major thing that comes back a lot is, all right, but how am I going to help that person when they come back to me and need help with my pattern? So that goes back to like that's never been an issue, and I've been doing this forever for myself, for many other designers in knitting and in crochet. That's never been an issue for two reasons. The first one is people that can't follow a technical document in another language can ask questions in English, right? So they're not able to follow a pattern in English, but saying, I don't understand row 3, that's not hard. So they'll be able to ask you that by email. But more than that, they likely won't come to you with the question. Um, they'll go to their favorite Facebook group or Discord channel or wherever, and that's who they're going to ask. And those people speak their language. So it rarely comes up that the question is sent to the designer in that other language that you don't speak. So that's the first thing. The other one I don't get. A lot of the time I see people say, well, I have trouble getting rid of scammers in English. I don't want to add another language to get scammed in, as if people can't already copy your pattern and offer it in 17 other languages without your knowledge.
Like it feels to me like it would be more likely if like you only have it available in English and now it's like, oh, hey, there's a market to translate this to other languages. But
you're like, if you're basing your decisions on people that copy things, you wouldn't be online. Because I
selling
mean,
patterns is not for you.
exactly. You might want to look into another line of work because that's just a part of life. It's a crappy part of life, but adding languages to your pattern section is not gonna add, like, I can't explain it. Like, mathematically, it wouldn't make sense. Like, people will copy you just as much if you only offer in English because they see the pictures. Copycats or people that can copy a design from a photo, they exist. They speak tons of languages and they don't need your written pattern for that. So, yeah, I mean, I'm saying it like a little bit crudely, but because to me it's not an argument that makes a lot of sense, as if people that speak other languages copy more than English speakers or something. Like
Yeah.
it's just weird.
Yeah. The other con that I think of is the expense of it. And that's something I was going to ask a little bit later. But
Yeah.
what does the cost of translating a pattern look like, say, compared to tech editing?
So I would say it so I can only talk about myself, and I know that my rates for both are a little bit higher than the median, because I'm really good at it and I have a lot of experience. That said, I think it's not, I think, I would say it's about the same. So yeah, it's an expense. Just like tech editing. So a lot of people, that won't be the first thing that they think of to do if they have money to add to their expenses. Just a parentheses here. We should pay testers too. Those people do us a great favor testing our patterns for what the price of a pattern, like just to get the pattern for free. All of these things that go into selling a wonderful pattern that's been tested, graded, edited, all of that stuff, like every single person in that chain should be paid. But yeah, so the translation would be a last addition, I would say, like the final step in that chain. So definitely get testers, get a tech editor, and if you can, get your patterns translated after, because I do agree it's an additional cost. And always, I recommend starting with your most popular patterns and working back. So most recent, most popular, and working back as you see, as you develop that audience, because you do have to develop that audience. They will show up on Ravelry again, as I said, because people can search that way. But you know, if you're only selling one pattern in another language, people still need to get to know you as a designer.
Mhm. I love that. And something great about translating patterns is it's something you can do later. Like you don't have to
Yeah,
do it when you first publish it. You can add it.
you can add that at some
Here's
point. You can
5 years
say,
later.
yeah, I mean, you can decide at some point, oh, this collection is doing really well, so I'm gonna get this pattern collection in a second language. And then when that does well, you can add more patterns or go and add a third language, because if it's doing well in one language that people speak in your region or in your audience, chances are it'll do well with people that speak another language. That's generally the case.
Yes. Okay, so how do we choose what language to translate to first?
So you should be looking at your metrics and seeing where people are from. So if you find that you have like a large pool, for me, it's very obvious. Being in French Canada, like my patterns, I write them first in, I was going to say I write them first in French, but that's a lie. I write them first in English because that's how I learned to crochet, and then I translate them to French. My province is French speaking, so it was like a given that I was going to offer my patterns in French, and then I also add the English. Look at the people in your region. What do they speak in terms of other languages? Your audience metrics, what are they telling you? But also, like, who can you access in terms of a translator? Because obviously that will affect your choices quite a bit.
Yeah, yeah. So if you're listening, you're not familiar, you can check your like analytics on Ravelry. You can see what countries people are buying from. And you can check your Instagram analytics. You can check your website analytics,
Facebook.
Facebook analytics, like any social media. You can check and see where your audience is actually from. And it gives
And
you
you
the
should.
yes.
Well, you should that like that's completely beside the point, but all of that about your audience, like who are they, like where do they live, what do they like all that stuff, like those stats are there for us to use. Yeah.
Yes, and they're valuable. So
Very.
how do I even go about finding a translator? Where do I find a translator?
So I would say in terms of translating knitting and crochet patterns, ask around. Ask people that you know that get their patterns translated, and you know designers already that get their patterns translated, because a regular translator will likely not be able to do this work. The person has to understand crochet and knitting. Otherwise, they're going to give you nonsensical translations that don't take into account the technicalities. So you'll want to, look into, again, go to Ravelry, look at a designer that you like offering their patterns in multiple languages and ask them who they work with. The great thing about the US dollar being so high is that if you work with someone outside the US, you're going to get a great rate. So that's really cool to know. And yeah, so you need someone that already does pattern translation, not just a translator and not just a knitter that says, oh yeah, I mean, I speak Spanish, I can do that. Not necessarily. Speaking the other language is useful, but you also have to be able to translate into the second language. So you need both. You need a translator that does the specific craft that you're looking to translate. So ask designers around you. I would say that's true too for looking for a tech editor. So
yeah. And my first thought of where I would go is the Tech Editor Hub Facebook group. Obviously it's supposed to be for tech editing, but you can find ghostwriters, you can find translators, you can just put a post in there and be like, hey, I'm looking to translate my patterns to X language, or just say I'm looking to translate my patterns and ask what languages people translate to.
Absolutely. And that's funny because when I met Sarah in Chicago this past June, she told me, because she had noticed that when she does that Saturday post where you can share your services that you offer, she was like, you should tell people, you should write in that post in French so that people will have to get your comment translated so that they know, or French people will just be like, oh my God, she's like me. Yeah. So I really love that Sarah has that openness of us looking for different service providers in that group.
I love that. Yes. Okay. So what does the process of translating a pattern look like? How does it work?
So it's really straightforward. Generally speaking, the designer will have to send a modifiable file. So it can be Word, it can be Canva, it can be PowerPoint, Publisher. So I get that modifiable document, I make a copy of it, and I will translate just like through the whole pattern from A to Z. And then after I've done that translation, I will go through both patterns, I print them and I compare to make sure that I haven't introduced errors while I was translating, which, can happen, especially with knitting when you're doing, so in English, that won't make sense, but I'm telling you in French, it would. Purl and knit, when you translate them, they can easily be reversed because there's just it's 4 letters, but with the end is different. So I have to go back and make sure that everything's still the same, because I have this thing where I used to force kids to play teacher. I will also at that point sometimes notice it's not a tech editing job, but I might notice that some math is off or whatever, and I will make a note of that to let the designer know. And then I send back the translation and I ask to see the final document before they put it up for sale. So when it's PDF'd, I want to see it again just to make sure, because sometimes when you're copy pasting, you might not notice that you're missing a section because you don't speak the language, so you won't see that it's missing. So I like to make sure that the PDF that's sent out into the world actually matches a translation, has the same things in the correct spots, and yeah, is perfect to be sold.
Yeah, it's interesting because, when you're working with a tech editor, as a designer, you review the edits, you can confirm yeah, I agree or I don't agree. With a translation, if you don't speak that language, it's just you have to trust the translator.
You really do. Yeah, it is definitely a relationship that has to be built on trust, and that's easily lost. So it's like the most valuable thing that I sell in that service. It means a lot to me, and that's also why I want to see that final version, just to make sure, because it's so easy to introduce something or to copy it in a different section. Definitely.
Yeah. Um, and then one question I had written down was, should the translated version be separately edited and tested, or does this just all happen after the testing and editing is complete?
So it won't need to be tested again for sure. I can't speak to most translators. I don't believe you would need it tech edited again if it has been tech edited. But then I'm a tech editor, so like it's I can't find the word in English, but it's a malformation of mine where I will see if there are editing mistakes, but they would be in the English version. I would let the person know that there was a mistake there, and I wouldn't add it in French. I would correct it. If the pattern has been tech edited, translating it doesn't require a new edit. If it hasn't been tech edited, then you'll have two versions with the same mistakes if you're using a translator that isn't also a tech editor. So that's why I recommend always doing the translation last. The tech edit is the most important piece, and then you get the translations done.
Yeah, I can see how, like obviously, if your main con for not translating is cost, this doesn't make sense. But if you have a new relationship with a new translator and you're just like want a little more reassurance,
Mm-hmm.
maybe it would feel reassuring to hire a French tech editor or whatever language, a tech editor and maybe a tester or two from your audience and just be like, can you go through this and
Yep.
make sure this actually translated correctly?
I
Just
mean,
to build your
absolutely.
confidence. Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. And I mean, so I can, like, in my case, if someone were to ask, like, well, how am I going to know? And can you provide someone? Because I know no one who speaks French. I've never met a French person in my life aside from you. Can you, like, give me a few names that I can ask for just, to go through the pattern and see if you did a good job? Like, I can provide a group of 5,000 people that will be more than willing to raise their hands and say, I'll look through it. So that's definitely something that would be, I would welcome that kind of question from a designer I would start working with. Yeah, I mean, for sure. And once that trust is built, then like that's a non-issue.
Yeah. Yeah. Um, is there anything that you think designers should know before they jump into translating their patterns?
Should know. I mean, it's not instantaneous. It does take a few days. Um, so if I'm doing work for someone and I'm doing the tech editing and then also the translation, like that can be anywhere from like 72 hours to a week for the pattern. Yeah, so it does take time. It is a paid service and you get what you pay for kind of thing. If you're looking for translators on Fiverr, you might be disappointed in the results. So, yeah, it's again, it's a luxury service. It's not necessary to offer your patterns in another language, especially as English speakers or other like main languages in the world. If you're speaking one of the languages that have less speakers in the world, then you will need to offer in English if you want your business to grow. And at that point, like that's an investment in your business that you do need to take into account.
Yes, yes.
Oh, I'm sorry.
No, go ahead.
And we, like translators, tech editors, we're not doing it to get your pattern for free. Like I can purchase patterns. I'm doing like when I translate a pattern, it's actual like work that I enjoy doing. Yeah, we're not doing it to scam you out of a pattern, promise.
Yes, I love that. There was oh, just to reiterate something that you had shared earlier, I
Yeah.
think it sounds like it's really important to make sure your tech editing is done before translating. Make sure
Oh,
the problems
definitely.
are resolved before you get to that point because it sounds like it would just be a lot more headache, time going back and fixing mistakes.
Yeah, if you do the tech editing last, the thing is, you might think, oh, I'll be able to spot the differences and change them myself. And unless your pattern is really, really, really simple, or if it's a graph, I mean, otherwise you will have to go back to the translator. So skip that step, tech edit first. It's super important to do anyway, and then translate.
Yes. Um, you mentioned time-wise, like if you were tech editing and translating. How does the time compare, like if you're tech editing compared to translating? Like, is it about the same amount?
Um, No, I think translation takes less time. Because tech editing, is very specific. There's a lot of technicalities that go into it. You have to check the math. You have to check. Um, I was going to say consistency, but that's not what I mean. You have to make sure that everything is constant in the pattern. That there's no like, oh, here I used this abbreviation and here I used another one. So it's more detail oriented tech editing, more steps. Translation, just like you just go through and then you check that everything is still the same on both languages. So yeah, tech editing is much longer. In all cases, I do put the pattern in a corner for a few hours to like overnight just to make sure that I get it all out of my system and then reread it. So there's always going to be at least like one day between sending it and getting it back because of that, more if it's a busy season.
I love that. That's wonderful. And I really love that you brought this whole topic up as a podcast idea because when I first started designing 5 years ago, or almost 5 years ago, it was something that was top of my mind was like, oh, like it'd be because, well, I've I've traveled abroad, I studied abroad and all that, and uh,
Okay.
so it was like, top of my mind when I first started. I was like, oh, I would love to have it my patterns in, 10 different languages or whatever, 5 different languages, and all this stuff. And I'm like, at that point, I knew I didn't have the finances to invest in that. And it honestly just hasn't like really even like I haven't even thought of it in a few years
Right.
now of like, oh wait, that's something I wanted to do and would be a really amazing thing. Obviously I want to look at my numbers and analytics and
Oh yeah.
think about it. But yeah, I just really love that we're having this conversation because it's not something that was top of my mind.
Well, and the fact is, like, you having traveled abroad, that showed you how true it is that not everyone speaks English, right? So it's completely understandable that someone that lives in Toronto and has lived in Toronto all their lives won't realize that not everyone speaks English. Well, in Toronto they might know because it's a multicultural city, but unless you're seeing people every day that speak another language, it's just not something that you'll think about, or you assume that more people speak English than actually do.
Yeah.
um,
Well,
for
and
sure.
when you live somewhere where like nobody knows English, you also understand how impossible it is to read things that you don't understand. Like,
Absolutely. Yeah.
there's
And
no
I
way
mean,
you can make your way through it if you don't know the language.
I went, it's like very tangential what I'm going to say, but I went to First Nations Christmas market or holiday market, and all the signage was written in their language that I don't speak and I can't read. Um, and it was just like one afternoon, and people were talking amongst themselves, like, and I couldn't understand, like it wasn't French, it wasn't English. And I was like, oh, yeah, it's really cool. And at the same time, you realize like there's so much out there that we just don't know about. So yeah, it's like I will say it's more natural for someone who speaks Italian to say, I'm going to spend on translating my patterns to English because they want to broaden their audience, and it'll like really broaden their audience. But people are so happy when you serve them in their language that they'll just like add you to their favorites, and they'll, you can easily add a section on Ravelry, on GoSadie, or wherever. Like you can add the languages in GoSadie as well. So people will just find you. Like there's not that much to do, and patterns don't go bad. So some patterns you'll pay that service back quicker than others, but in the end, like they'll all pay for themselves. It just might take longer for some than others.
Yes, I love that so much. Is there anything else you want to say before we wrap up?
You're super sweet. I'm really glad I met you.
Thank you. I'm so glad I met you too. For those listening, we met at Rhinebeck. We both stayed in the GoSadie house. So that's yeah. And yeah, so I'm so happy to have you here on the podcast. So happy we were able to chat. How can folks find you if they want to see your designs, if they want to look into hiring you as a tech editor or a translator, all of that stuff?
So I'm on Facebook, Instagram, but the easiest way to find me is on my website, which is www.ACCROchet.com. So that's ACCROchet.com. And what it means is addicted to crochet. It's a play on words that means addicted to crochet.
Love it. Thank you so much for joining us, Julie.
Thank you so much for having me.
Wow. Thanks so much for listening to this episode. If you found it valuable, please share the podcast with a designer friend. And if you have a minute, leave a review. It's so helpful for me and means the world to me. Chat soon.